Welcome to Amanda Spann's Minimal Viable Podcast, the show that gives you a real and relatable look at the world of tech and entrepreneurship from industry all-stars.
Today on MVP, I'll be joined by Greg Greenlee, founder of global inclusion platform Blacks in Technology. Greg and I will discuss the dynamics of growing and adding value to digital communities, furthering the Black tech ecosystem, and his experiences and learnings from the late, great Nipsey Hussle.
MVP is brought to you by Simplero, the all-in-one software for online entrepreneurs. Most digital coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs are using 7+ online tools that still don't meet their needs. Simplero reduces the headache of product management by allowing you to host your mailing list, online courses, membership communities, marketing automation, and digital products all on one platform. It's my personal go-to tool of choice for selling my ebooks and courses, and I think it's pretty affordable, simple to use, and easy to get started. So if you like to experience less tech and less stress when selling your content or products online, check out Simplero at simplero.com. That's SIMPLERO.com. Now let's start the show.
Hi, Greg. Welcome to MVP. Happy to have you.
Hey, Amanda. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. So we've known each other for a long time, back to like my Blerdology days. I think we met for the first time in Atlanta. It's been a very, very long time since then, but a lot of really exciting things have happened in the meantime. I would love for you to kind of give a little background. And I for every episode, I kind of give our listeners some insights into like who you are and what you do or whatnot. But I would love to hear from your perspective. As the founder of Blacks in Technology, like how did you come and feel compelled to launch Blacks in Technology, and like how did you know you were the right person to do it?
So back in, first of all, Greg Greenlee, the founder of Blacks in Technology. I'm also an engineer as well. And so I've been working in the tech industry for over 16 years. So back in, I would say around 2006, I was attending, I would say about 2008. I used to attend a lot of tech conferences back in the day, not so much now, but I was attending a conference up in Columbus, Ohio called the Ohio Linux Fest. And I've been attending these conferences for a number of years. And at that time, I was really, I guess, green to the fact of, to the disparities that there are in tech when it comes to Black women and men in tech. And so, I wasn't just starting my career, but it was one of those things where it was just like, this is just kind of how things are. But I did notice at these conferences there was a lack of representation, either as attendees or speakers, and it didn't. I didn't approach the situation, I guess, from the standpoint of like waving my fist in the air and saying, "Hey, hey, Saul, where the Black people at on the wall?" So it wasn't like that. My thing was, here I am at this conference, this free conference, right? And a lot of the conferences back then that I attended were free. And there's a wealth of information. There's a ton of networking. There's all these different tech companies that people can, talk to representatives and things like that. Why aren't we in this space? So that was my mindset. It was, why aren't we in this? It was trying to figure out that problem. So it wasn't about why aren't you letting us in this space? Because really at that time I didn't have any idea like how deep like racism and some of those things played into us not being in these spaces, right? So my thing was, what can I do in order to get more Black people to come to spaces like this where we can network, we can build with each other and things like that. I decided, I said, hey, maybe this is an issue about awareness. Maybe we just don't know about some of these conferences. Or maybe it's kind of like the chicken, not chicken and egg, but more of like this catch-22 thing where one of us go, or a few of us will come to the conference. We don't see enough of us there. We don't feel comfortable, or, we kind of get disgruntled with it and we don't come back, right? So then the next Black people that come to that conference the next year, they see the same thing, and maybe they don't come back, right? So then you have kind of like this revolving door type of thing where we never build up that kind of like that mass, to where we see enough of us to where we're coming back year after year. So I kind of looked at it from those two perspectives: awareness, and then just showing up and being represented and coming back and things like that. So I said, hey, how about I build a community that will allow us to make each other aware of these conferences and events and things of that nature, meetups, what have you. Not only that, this will give us an opportunity to get to know other Black women and men in the tech industry, build with each other, share knowledge, share ideas, and then we can like start building a community from there. So started off online, strictly online, I launched it in 2009, and it just at first it was just an online thing. So you would go, you would sign up, become a member. We had, and we still do, we still have some of this functionality on the site. We would build a profile similar to Facebook, and you could friend people. We had a forums board where you could ask questions, and that's where a lot of our activity and our engagement initially started. So if you go to our site now and you go to I think forums is still up there on the site, you'll go and you'll see like just a ton of messages and posts and things like that from way back from 2009, where we just talked about technology, we talked about social issues, we talked about politics, and this was before Slack and all that stuff. So that's where most of our engagement and activity happened. So then over the time, and I know this is a long-winded answer.
No, I want to hear about it,
Yeah, so over time, after we started building it, growing the community, the online community, and at that time it was just word of mouth, totally organic. And once we started getting members and things like that, I was going hard on a lot of like online posts and things like that, and Reddit, and there were a bunch of, when diversity and inclusion really started becoming a thing in technology, right? And people like Wayne Sutton and Angela Benton and all those people were talking about it and posting and things. Like I would go and say, hey, like I just started this community called Blacks in Technology. This is for us. This is where we need to be. This is where we can start really building community. And so that's kind of how the word got out. Like I would just hit up any message boards or anything like that where diversity and inclusion was being talked about. If there was a post in let's just say Black Enterprise, for example, I would go on Black Enterprise and I would read it, and then I would say, hey, look, here's Blacks in Technology, here's a website. So I was doing a lot of shameless self-promotion back in the day just to kind of build up the community and get people there. And then from there, I really wanted to start representing who we are as Black engineers and developers and innovators and entrepreneurs. So started getting more into doing podcasts, because I really wanted a platform and an outlet to tell our stories and to say, hey, like we're in this space. Like everyone wants to say we're not here, or everyone wants to kind of discount the reason why they're not hiring Black people is because they don't know about us and things like that. And I'm here to say, like, hey, there's tons of us here. You're just not looking, or either you don't know where to find us or you're purposely not looking, right? And so and here's an outlet, here's a platform where I'm telling the stories, positive stories about Black women and men who are either working in tech or building tech companies and that thing. So started doing that. And then maybe in 2012, I launched a separate site called BitTech Digest. And that's where that site was to start to where people in the community can contribute stories and articles and things like that. And I wanted a platform because I had noticed, from reading online mags, tech mags and things like that, or even, at the time more paper publications, that we weren't represented there as well, right? And so I wanted a place, either as writers or stories being written about us. So I wanted a place where I would allow, or I could allow our members to contribute tech articles. They could write about their expertise in whatever technology, or they could write about, entrepreneurship, anything, right? And so that's what Big Tech Digest was. And then eventually I just kind of, I morphed both of those, just combined both sites, because we had blacksintechnology.net and then we had bittechdigest.net. And then I realized how silly that was to have two separate sites. And so I just combined both of the sites, and that's kind of what you see right now. blacksintechnology.net, you'll see where, we have all of our announcements and stories and our podcasts and then videos and things like that. So that's a long-winded answer to how I felt compelled to start it. Oh, yeah.
And give people a robust answer about like what Black Technology is, where it came from, and where it's at now.
Yeah, and
you kind of answered my second question, because I was going to ask, like, how has it evolved since like 2009, and you kind of answered that, and that it, there's lots of different verticals to it now, and I'm curious to know, did you feel like adding those other verticals, that they come as a result of the community's request, or did you kind of see how the industry was changing and then you just kind of made adjustments based on that?
Yeah, so real quick, the second part of that question, how did you know you were the right person to do it? Like, I'll be honest, like I didn't know I was the right person. I probably still don't know if I'm the right person. Like, it's I guess it's this thing where, sometimes, and I think everyone goes through this, like, hey, like, are you the right person to be leading this? Are you the right person that, to actually, to continue doing this, right? Because I've been doing this now for about 10 years, and, it's been a slow process in some of the things that we're doing, and at a faster process in some other things. But, you always, I would say as an entrepreneur, and you probably know this as well, there's some days where you feel like 100%, like, yeah, you are, and then some days you feel like, maybe this isn't really my thing.
Don't I know it? I can relate.
Yeah. So, I mean, that still creeps in sometimes. Like, you sometimes doubt yourself, but the thing that usually pushes me through is when someone comes and they'll drop an email or they'll send me a message and say, hey, thank you for starting this community. I had no idea this existed. This is great. This really makes me feel at home, things like that. And it really lets you know that, like, hey, maybe I am the right person, and I'm definitely on the right path and doing the right thing. As far as, how it evolved, it's a combination of, what the community wants, because definitely listening to the community to hear what their wants and needs are, and hopefully being able to act on that. But also some of the stuff is just like experimentation. Like, I just throw it out there and see if it takes, and say, hey, that's a bad idea or that's a good idea. And some of it is and some of it is dictated by the industry, right? Like podcasts has been a big thing. Like, when before it was like, we had the forums and the message boards, like that was the thing, right? And then we had this thing called IRC, Internet Relay Chat, like that was the thing. And then it's like, no, you need to start doing podcasts, because podcasting and social media and all that is the thing. So it's, it's gradually start, having the, some of the things in the industry kind of dictate what we experiment with, and then try it out and see what takes and go from there.
No, I totally understand that. Like, and me starting a podcast. People have been telling me to start a podcast for years and years and years.
And congrats, by the way. I'm glad you did.
Thank you. And I kind of been avoiding it, just honestly just running from the work, because I just understood that, like, I didn't really know much about the podcasting space, and that it would, at least, if I throw myself into something, I kind of jump in with 2 feet, and it would be, I already had a lot on my plate. Understatement of the year, right? So a lot of people come to me and they look to me for like content, or they want one-on-one consulting, or mentorship, and you just can't get to everybody, and so this is the podcast is kind of my way of being able to create content, like community content for people and for myself. Like it's very, and I say this all the time on the podcast. It's very self-serving to some degree because it gives me an opportunity to catch up with people who I probably needed to have a conversation with anyway. And it kind of gives me an opportunity to be like, hey, how are you doing? You know, and like what's going on with you? And we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of things and like just running businesses and, you know, having our jobs and our lives and our families and things like that, you know, we forget to kind of sit down and chat with one another. So it's great in that it kind of slows me down and it gives me an opportunity to kind of not only, you know, talk to people, but kind of give some real insights and perspectives from and give the founders the opportunity to tell their own story on their own terms. Because I'm sure you can relate to doing interviews and things like that. You know, you kind of get the same questions all the time, and then people don't give you the freedom to, you know, say the things that you want to say the way you want to say them. So, you know, I am just like, come on my show, let's talk about it. You can say whatever you want, and you know, tell your story on your terms. So, you know what I'm happy that you're able to do that.
Yeah, you know what I find so incredibly dope is that I'm starting to see more. Because when I started doing the podcast, I could probably name just a handful of black women and men that were doing podcasts at that time in regards to tech. And now I see a lot more. And I it's so dope to see because we need this. We need this representation. So I'm so happy that you're doing this. I'm so happy I'm seeing other people that are doing it as well. You know, representation is huge. And you know, if you can't hear or see or the person or you know these people who are doing it, who look like you and talk like you, then some people don't have, you know, any idea that they can become that. And just hearing stories like that and, you know, stories that are inspiring, stories that are motivating, you know, that it goes a long, long way. So I'm you know, that's why I say congrats to you. I'm you know, excited to see more black women and men have podcasts and put content out there and positively represent us because we need it. And I always say that if you don't tell your own story, you leave it up to someone else to tell it, and it might not be favorable, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And I got kind of tired of seeing, like, you know, I think rags to riches stories in tech, and that like a lot of these writers that like, you know, you know what I'm talking about, like at the business tech publication.
We've all been in jail, and then when we got out of jail, we started Code Camp, and then from Code Camp, I get tired.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, you have these writers, and they kind of paint you as like, oh, well, this person was poor, and now they've come up, and all this stuff, and it's just like, you know, that's some people's story. It's not everybody's story, and even if, you know, that is their story, I mean, that's not all they are. So, you know, this is kind of I want to utilize this as a forum for people to kind of tell their stories on their own terms. So
definitely, we're not a monolith.
Right, absolutely, and I think, you know, BIT and Blacks in Technology is an opportunity for that as well. Both like online and offline with that kind of the meetups you have, and I know BITCON is coming up. It's kind of a new addition to your programming. It's coming up, I believe, October
9th through 12th.
Okay, 9th through 12th. And I know that's coming up. And you've only been doing BITCON for maybe, 2-3 years now?
No, this is our second year.
Okay.
Last year was our first year. Yep. Okay.
So it's relatively new. And, like, last year you had, you know, Nipsey Hussle as your keynote speaker. And, you know, tragic turn of events this year, but I imagine he was very, very dynamic and electric to kind of have. And, you know, what type of energy did a person like that bring to the conference? And, like, was there any key takeaways that you remembered in particular that he kind of left the audience with?
So, and two things, right? You know, rest in peace, Nipsey, the late great Nipsey Hussle. We were blessed to have him, you know, be at our conference, and be able to speak on a panel there, and So the dynamic and what it brought to our conference was that seeing someone of his stature as being this this hip hop icon, and hearing his story, and I think it brought a level of, it kind of grounded the conference a little bit as far as, hey, this conference isn't just for hardcore techies, right? Because we like to tout our conference as a tech conference. I don't ever say to people like, hey, like this is a diversity and inclusion conference. Like we're diversity and inclusion by default, right? Because we focus on Black women and men. But this is a tech conference. This is a conference for engineers, innovators, entrepreneurs, and the like. So what Nipsey brought to this, because he's an entrepreneur as well, but he really brought a level of, really down to earth, atmosphere to the conference, because that lets people know, like, hey, you can come to this conference even if you're not a hardcore engineer, right? And you can come to this conference even if it's even if you're like a musician, for instance, right? Because we had a Sound of Tech part of BITCON last year, and the people that were part of that were like producers and DJs, and so that brought a whole entire new aspect to a tech conference, because it's what they deal with on a day-to-day is technology, right? They make their music using technology, and Nipsey brought it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and is also, with him giving back to the community and starting like these smart stores and things like that. He brought this whole thing of, hey, like, this is for not just the hardcore engineers, but for everyone else as well, to come and hear about great things that you can do in technology. You can hear about building a business. You can hear about, maybe the engineering part if you're interested in that. And I think he just brought like a real, good aura to our conference. And some of the key takeaways was that, and he brought the community out too. That's a huge thing, and not just the tech community. He brought, because in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it's heavy populated with Ethiopians, right? Immigrants. And everyone, who knows anything about Nipsey Hussle knows that that's part of his background as well, right? And so a lot of people who were just, proud to see, Nipsey Hussle and see another fellow Ethiopian make it, right? They just wanted to come out and hear him talk. So he brought that aspect to our conference as well, because there were a ton of people who came out just for that night, just to see him speak on that panel. And it wasn't, and like I said, there were other people. There were people from YouTube who were on that panel. There were other tech people, and then there was, we had Nipsey Hussle, the hip hop icon, the entrepreneur, round that entire panel off. So I think it brought a lot of energy. It brought the community out, and it really, let us know that this was the right move in bringing him to the conference.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what can we expect from BITCON this year? Are there anything in particular that that's going to stand out as something you're really excited about this year? You're really excited to bring or to do differently? Last year was your first year, but you kind of came out swinging. So
right.
what can we expect from this year's conference?
So we got some pretty exciting things. We are the first day of the conference is going to be focused more on tech entrepreneurship. It's similar, like some of the programming is similar to last year, but we are doing some different things. Like we're having like this cooking demo that focuses on food tech, right? And that's happening on Wednesday. So I think that's pretty dope. We got a couple of chefs coming in that's going to cook for the audience. We're also having a capture the flag. It's more of and that's on day 3. It's more InfoSec, information security. And so the capture the flag is kind of like an escape room, but with computers, right? So we have people who are security-minded folk, hackers, if you will, and they, we have McAfee that is going to be setting up. Is going to be setting up the capture the flag session, right? And it's just basically a bunch of puzzles and things for like hackers to solve to try to get to like the ultimate goal. And then I think there's a prize for that. We have Miss Black. I think it's Miss Black USA is going to be speaking as well.
Okay.
So that's pretty dope. And then we have the CIO, Chief Information Officer of Illinois, that's going to be keynoting as well. We have Anthony D. Mays from Google. I think some people might have heard of him. He's put out some blogs and some YouTube videos and things like that. He kind of made a name for himself. So he's going to be keynoting as well. So we have some, and then we're doing a basketball hack day as well. I think that's on day 4. Day 4 is going to be free and open to the community. So that's going to be the day where we have our career fair, a bunch of companies represented there. We're going to have some workshops and some other. We're going to have workshops. We're going to have a basketball hack day. And then we're going to have some like demos and things like that to people, some interactive demos. So Basketball Hack Day is going to be our hackathon that focuses on making, some type of application or program for, something that deals with basketball, most likely Minnesota Timberwolves, since it is in Minnesota. We did this with a few of our chapters for baseball. So we had Baseball Hack Day back in the spring, and so we're kind of spinning that off and doing Basketball Hack Day at BITCON. And then we also have a pitch competition called BITCON 180 that's happening on day 2. So
so you got a little something for everybody. You got people for early stage who are looking for funding. You got people from the community who kind of are just like kind of tech curious. They want to get involved. Yeah. You have things for the hardcore techies and something that makes it light and animated. And I think that's so important just because a lot of the tech conferences, even like the Black tech conferences, they can be a little monolithic, right? So it's just like. I said it. They can be. I actually, what's funny? I have a really funny relationship with conferences right now, and I think a lot of people can kind of relate to this. And like any space, like I think in technology, yes, but like technology conferences can be really expensive. And they just add up. Like going to a bunch of them per year, unless you have like an employer who's just paying for them, they add up. Then 2, I think oftentimes. They can be monolithic, and you get kind of the same people at the same conferences all over the country. And so you go to one place and then you hear these people speak, and then like I don't need to go to 4 other conferences to hear the same thing. And then I think the last component of it is like you just don't want to get sucked into this cycle where, and I think I was guilty of this earlier. Like in my career where you go to all these conferences and it ends up being the thing where you just go to the conference to talk about what you're going to do when you could actually be doing it if you weren't at the conference. And that's the thing, right? Right. So you kind of, I think it's important to like, I do think conferences are important because they're kind of like, kind of homecomings, if you will, for essentially for Black technologists and those who are kind of working in the space. And so to make them kind of dynamic and robust is really, and like with all types of content for all types of people who are interested in the spaces is key. So I want to go ahead.
I want to let me speak on that real quick because for what I forgot to mention, day 2 is devoted to media, front-end design, so like UI, UX, marketing, and front-end web development. So we have something for those particular people as well. Because, and I tell you, starting off with Bit, like I was like a purist, right? I was like a tech engineer purist, and like anyone that said anything to me about like marketing, or I would be adamant, no, this is not about. But you know what I've come to learn is that you need all those pieces.
I'm glad
you
know
marketing.
that. I'm glad you realize that. As a marketer, I'm glad you guys realize you need us.
Yeah, and people need it way, 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 way more than they think they do. And it took me a few years to realize that, and I'm glad that I finally did. And I'm glad that this year at BITCON we're devoting a day to that. We have a panel called "The Lens is Black," where we are talking with three people. Deshana Spencer from Quality TV.
I know Deshana.
You probably know Sherelle Dorsey as well.
I've never met Sherelle before. Yeah, I've never met Sherelle before, but I'm familiar with her and her work.
Okay. And then we have a gentleman by the name of Roye Akupe, and all three of them are doing something to positively represent Black people in the media. Deshana is doing it with Quali, which is a streaming service. Quality TV is a streaming service focused on Black film, right? Black, short films, feature-length films, things like that. Sherelle, of course, she has the plug, which is it's a news, but it's also a site that kind of aggregates news about Black people in tech. So entrepreneurs, engineers, and anything that happens in the tech ecosystem when it comes to Black people. She is like curating content and writing original content and news and things like that. And then Roye, he actually has his own like animation studio, right? So he's producing animation and comic books and things like that focuses on African superheroes of African descent. So we're having this panel called "The Lens is Black." There's a subtitle to that as well. I don't know offhand, but just talking about what it means to positively represent Black people in media and why we need it, why it's important, how they built their platforms and things like that. And so that whole day is devoted to like media and marketing and UI, UX and the things that people like the hardcore engineers might not know that matters, right? We're devoting a day to that to show you that, hey, this absolutely matters. And if you're starting a business, or anything of the sort, like you need marketing, you need people who know about media and social media and all that stuff. Like this is, if you don't, then you're going to see how slow it is to get your company off the ground and really get it to the people like you want it to. You definitely need it.
Absolutely. And what made you realize that it was so critically important? Because there's so many people, there's so many purists out there, and this doesn't just apply to like just tech and like developers. Like there are people who are just they're like purists in so many industries, and they're just sticklers for it. So like, what was the thing that kind of changed your mind and made you realize that like I need to take a broader approach and pull some other people in with varying skill sets to kind of make this thing go?
So I think it was someone who I had like do a flyer for an event. That was it. It was someone did a flyer that was dope as hell, and I was just like, oh yeah, I kind of need this. and from there I was just like, I need someone. And then on top of that, like when we started. When we really started putting BITCON together for last year and building up to that, and really started seeing, and even going back further, I think I've seen a deck of another conference. Like when you go to solicit sponsorship from some of these companies, right? They want to kind of see like what your what your conference is going to look like, and kind of like some of the highlights of what you're going to be, what your programming is going to be, right? And I'd seen like a few years ago, someone slid me a deck of like a sponsorship deck, and I looked at it and I was just like, wow, like who puts this together? And because this is super, like I can see now why marketing is much needed, because I would have never in a million years have come up or even thought about coming up with something this like visually this appealing, to where it just, when you look at it, you're like, like, hey, I need to be a part of this, right? And that's kind of what that's what marketing does. It draws you in and it makes you compelled to, either buy something or be a part of something. And when I seen that slide slide deck, I was just like, oh, okay, this is what we need. This is what BIT needs. And then as we started, a few years later, we started developing BITCON. I was, happy to be introduced to Elizabeth Cotton. She runs our San Diego chapter, and she's, a marketing person as well. And she was just like bringing the business, and I was just like, whoa, like this is really dope. Like this is like BIT needed this years ago, and I'm kicking myself in the butt. And I don't know if you know her, Yuri Selassie. She works at Salesforce, but she told me this like way back in the day, and I was just like, whatever. I'm an engineer. I don't need marketing. And she told me, like, you need marketing. You don't know it. You might not know it for a while, but you're going to realize that you need it. And, I just came to the realization finally after seeing, some dope marketing content, and then seeing someone who works in it work for me and really put out some dope stuff, that I was just like, man, if only I, had this like years ago.
Well, everything comes in its time, but like you know it now, so keep the marketers on your team. And, it's funny because like I remember in like when the most recent recession hit, like marketers were probably the first people to go, and then they just had to hire marketers right back, because like now you need marketers more than ever, because there's more competition, people are spending less, and you got to cut through that cutter, and so. The value of like just a brand voice and really articulating your message above all others, or just connecting with the right people in a way that really represents who you truly are, is an art. And I think a lot of people underestimate it, and, marketing can come in so many different shapes and forms, but I'm glad you saw the light.
Yes.
I'm really glad you saw the light.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, what it has been like building BIT outside of, one of the tier 1 technology markets. I know like Cincinnati and Ohio is booming right now, but a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
And, there's a lot of things going on in Minnesota as well, but, people aren't necessarily privy to it the way they are to what's happening on the coast. So do you feel like it has been an advantage for you or a disadvantage to building? And I think this is a larger question in general, because I meet a lot of technologists who are really talented, but they are kind of not isolated, but they're in remote parts of the country, because a lot of times this is where their company is headquartered. If your company is headquartered in Arkansas, you may be the only, Black developer in a few miles in that region. So, how have you used that to your advantage? And like, if there's any insights you would like to share on that, I'm curious.
So, I don't know if I've actually used it to my advantage like that, because when I started BIT, it was all online, so no one really even knew where I was from, right? And a lot of people assumed that I was either from San Francisco or New York, because at the time there was actually when we started adding chapters, I think there was actually a meetup in New York called Blacks in Tech, right? So I think that they automatically affiliated us with that meetup. So when I would meet people, they were like, "Aren't you out here in San Francisco, or aren't you out here?" And then like I would, because a lot of the stuff that we did was based online. The power of the internet, you can be anywhere nowadays and do business and things like that. So building a community, an online community, starting out it was really relatively relatively easily because, simply because, we're online doing everything. And so I could bring in people, to the community from all over without them actually like knowing like, where I'm located or, being where I'm located, like being a hindrance or anything like that. I do think that it has allowed me to, I guess, be kind of, more for like, there's some things that are happening here in Cincinnati, but it's not hustle and bustle like all the time, right? And so because it's I guess a slower paced city, I didn't find myself needing to like always be at an event, and I could focus, my time on working on building, BIT online and working and and focusing on my my venture. So I guess from that aspect, it's kind of helped me. And then, just kind of being, I guess, overlooked as a city, it kind of works to my advantage because then people are really surprised when you tell them, like, where are you from? So you're not from San Fran? I'm like, no, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. You're from Cincinnati, Ohio? Wow. Yeah, that's where I'm from. So, like, people are kind of surprised, and they're surprised to see, like, what has grown. And then it kind of puts eyes on this area too. Like, oh, this is coming out of Cincinnati. Then maybe we need to take a closer look at Cincinnati. And there's some dope things that's happening in this area now. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean there is a lot of amazing things happening in smaller cities, but there's
right.
still I think there's power in that like, I look at a city like Cincinnati, and I just actually came and visited there like not too long ago, in that, everyone's vested in what's happening in that community. Whereas like in New York or San Francisco, everybody is kind of doing their own thing. But, here in like a Cincinnati or, in like a Detroit, everyone is really like vested in like, we want to invest in our community and we want to see it not necessarily even be the next big tech hub, but we want to see everyone have equitable access to opportunity here, and to make the most out of the opportunities that we can build ourselves. So it's good to see things like that happening around the country, and to let people know that they don't have to be on the coast per se to kind of make it work. Look
at Don Dixon. Look at Popcom, and look at Candace Burkeen of Hillman Accelerator. Like that's, and we've had a few wins as far as tech companies and startups go as well. Listener, Connexus, Wiser is another one. So yeah, I mean. It's definitely helped some of these startup companies because there's a lower cost of living here, so you can sink more money into operations and things like that. You can pay. You kind of have an advantage on as far as like paying people a little bit more money to come work for you because the cost of living is low here. So you pay them a little bit more, then they can be happy with that pay and staying here in this region as well. So I mean, there's definitely some advantages to being in a region like Cincinnati.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I had a couple other questions for you, but I think we kind of touched on them earlier. So I want to kind of ask you one remaining question, and then we always do a listener submitted question, which I think you'll be really great at answering. So the last question I have for you from my perspective is, like, what is your perception of the current Black tech ecosystem as a whole? Like, what do you like about it? What needs to change internally? Because we talk a lot about, like, what needs to change externally as far as, like, diversity and inclusion and all those things. But I think there's a culture within the Black tech ecosystem that we don't touch on enough. And, like, nuances, habits, patterns that we've kind of fallen into. That some are good, some are bad. So I'm just curious to know your perspective on that, on like what we should be doing internally to kind of move us forward, and what things you think are actually going really well.
Right. So, my perception on the current Black tech ecosystem is, I'm of course I would like things to be moving a lot quicker, but I like the direction. We didn't have this, just a few years ago. And what I mean by that is we didn't have, the Black VCs that are popping up now, right? We didn't have Black-led accelerators like we do now, right? We didn't even have this awareness like we do now. So we didn't have the media representation, from people doing podcasts like you to, these different platforms. Like, we didn't have this, and just a few years ago we didn't have it. So I'm super excited and super happy to see this starting to come about. You look at programs like HBCU.VC, right? Hadia has. You look at the Hillman Accelerator. You look at a lot of these, like Black Girls Code, right? And they've been around a little bit longer, but then you look at, Hidden Genius, like all these different programs that feed into the Black tech ecosystem, all these different organizations and companies that are now feeding into this ecosystem, I think is wonderful. And I think we should continue doing that. Even conferences, right? Tech Inclusion, Black Tech Week, BDPA has theirs, NSBA has theirs. They've been ongoing for a while, but you have a lot of newer ones that are coming up as well, BITCON, and there's a slew of other ones, right? Like, that was not here just a few years ago. And what I mean by I mean 5 years ago we didn't have this. So I love the growth. I love that this is finally coming about, and I just want that to continue. What I don't like about it, or should I say it like that?
You said it was so you
yeah,
because your voice when said that.
I got some gripes because I see. Look, I've been doing podcasts for years now, and on every podcast, I tell the people I say to the people, I shouldn't say tell, I say to the people, hey, that I'm the guest that I'm interviewing, hey, when say for instance, if it's an entrepreneur starting something, and I say, hey, when you get to this point or whatever, if you have an event going on, if you have marketing, anything, let me know. Send it to me, a PR or whatever. Send it to me, and I will promote you free of charge. I'll charge these large companies out here. Like, I can do that. I'll charge them. I don't want to charge you. I just want to promote you because it helps you and it helps me with content, right? Like, this is a two-way street here. Let me know what you're into. If there's an event that you want people to know about in regards to your company or your organization, let me know because I will promote it. I have a large community, right? I have a large platform, and I'm willing to promote you. There's no strings attached. Meaning, I'm not about to say, oh, you know what? Now I need a rack for that. Nah, it's not that. I just want to help you out, right? And the number of people, and most of the times it doesn't happen, right? That's one thing.
Let me stop you right there. Say less, Greg, because I'm going to send you all types of content. You're going to get a social share for every last one of these podcast episodes. And you know where that comes from, though? Honestly, Greg, is,
I want to know.
It comes from, I imagine a lot of people that you're working with are working in their business and on their business at the same time. And right. I think for me personally, I often don't reach out for help from people, not because I don't need help. And it's something I kind of have to break myself the habit of. It's just I'm just so invested in doing this thing, and I'm just trying to get through it, get it out, make sure it's of quality, and make sure that my audience is pleased with it. You don't think about, okay, I have a community of people around me who want to support me and who want to, further my cause or help me get to the next level, but because you're so consumed with the work. And I think that is the story for a lot of people. And it's something I think as kind of self-starting individuals that we kind of have to unlearn. It's not like, I don't want, of course I want help. If you're going to help me promote this podcast, I want all the help that I can get. I need help. I've been praying for help. So this comes right on time. I will send you content. You want content, I will send it your way.
Okay.
But it comes, I think what that is rooted in is honestly like just your head is down and you're not even seeing like the little degrees of help around you that you have. And it almost sometimes feels like work to reach out to people for help.
Oh, it definitely is.
It feels like, oh my God, I gotta.
It's another task.
That
you have to include in your day.
I'll be honest with you. I was up to probably 3:30 in the morning the other night doing stuff for the podcast, and like I really that was the only time I had to do it. Like I just been really incredibly busy between like my clients, my apps, and things like that, getting ready for. And then I'm going on vacation soon, so I want to make sure things are squared away while I'm away. And I was up just cranking out like marketing collateral. I was getting everybody's social shares together. I had to draft those up. I had to, I just brought on an assistant to help me with things and kind of have to brief her. But actually having to sit down and talk with her through all of these things, all these verticals, it becomes another thing to do on the to-do list, and it feels exhausting, but it's necessary. Right. It's absolutely necessary, and people want to support you. And I don't, so I don't think it's anything personal. I just think people are just incredibly busy and they're tired.
Right. So, and I definitely understand that, and I get that. I guess like and I've done over 100 plus podcasts. I'm not trying to call anyone in particular out or anything like that. Like this kind of leads into like my other thing that I would love to see more of, right? And that's with, even some of these different organizations and conferences and things like, of that nature. Like I just wish there was more collaboration amongst these organizations, and all we have to do is for me it's all about like let's try to find a way that we can strategically partner to where because I don't always have to have a spotlight. It doesn't have to always be on BIT like that. And I wish some people would get beyond that so that we can start collaborating and building something greater. Right, I'm totally happy with saying BIT and whatever, or somebody and BIT or whatever, and just put out something that, because our communities together, our followers together, is much greater than we are individuals. So there's a lot of splintering that happens within internally, right? And I just wish that wasn't so. And I wish more, because we could be doing events together with a ton of these organizations and really making things pop and really getting these sponsors to throw money towards us so that we can actually make bigger impacts. But I no matter what, it's hard to get people to think like that and put ego aside and not think that they. So for me, like I'm not going to boil the ocean. And I know that. And I know that each of these organizations, they play their part, and BIT plays, the part that we have to play. And so if we all got together, and it doesn't have to be all the time, like, it could be a smaller summit event or something like that, just anything. I just think there just needs to be more camaraderie that happens and more strategic partnerships to happen. And I think that we can do a lot more if we had that. And that kind of goes back to, just, hey, I'm here for you, and I want to be here for you. But it can't just be me reaching out, and saying that. Like, it has to be like this two-way street. We both have to work at it together, and I think greater things can come out of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I totally agree. And I've always thought about this, but I never really said it out loud. But I always thought that there should be some type of coalition of Black tech organizations. I don't know if this has been attempted before, but
yeah.
oh boy, it's attempted. It didn't go so well.
I would say this. There was a call one time, and I won't put out names or organizations or names of people that were involved, but there was a call this is when I first started, when BIT first started, really gaining any type of notoriety. And I was dealing with some people on the West Coast, and my mindset at the time has always been, it's been the same throughout all these years. Like, hey, like, I understand, like, you're doing this and I'm doing this and you're here and I'm here, but if we did some stuff together, like, that would be super dope and powerful, right? And so someone took that and was like, okay, I'm gonna send out an email to these different Black organizations who, and some of them were just starting, right? And so we can just talk about it. Like, just get on the phone and start talking about it. Doesn't have to be anything concrete right now, but let's just start talking, throwing out ideas on how, possible ways to collaborate. And so there was a conference call, and only the person who set up the conference call and me showed up. And I could hear the disappointment in their voice. Because, and then like in that email thread, people, certain people were talking about money. How do we split up the money if there's, and I was saying, we're not even there yet. Like, what are you talking about money? We don't have money yet. Like, let's just talk. Let's just get together. Let's show some unification, which I don't see a lot of, and I would love to see that happen.
I think, and that was going to be my next point in touching on this. I think a big part of the reason that people are apprehensive about having any type of coalition is because they are making quite a bit of money from their respective organization, and the sponsorship that might just come from them looking as if they are the lone player in the space. So that's the other side of it, which is unfortunate. But I just think, it just makes sense, even if, like, it's not necessarily, even if you just have a phone call, semi-annually, just like, hey, let's just have a meeting of the minds. I don't even need to know what you're up to next. I just, you just need to know all the people who are in the same ecosystem so that, like, if you do need each other or, there is something that is affecting, there's an initiative, a law passes, there's something that happens that affects the entire Black ecosystem, everyone shouldn't be working in, like, ancillary or just, ancillary is the wrong word, but working in silos to solve the problem where you can all convene in one place. And I think the money is a big factor of it, and that for a lot of people this is their bread and butter. And then I think the other part of it is just, ego and this being some people's babies. Like, I've had definitely ideas stolen from me or concepts stolen from me, or I won't even say stolen, like, I think no idea is new under the sun, and I've definitely borrowed ideas myself. So I just think, but you can't really attach your ego to it, in that, like, somebody is probably already done what you've done. And, someone else is going to do it in the future. And you just kind of have to get over yourself if you actually care about moving these organizations forward. And not saying that, like, there's no need for a bit in the future, but I think the ultimate goal for everyone should be that we don't need these organizations in the future, because we actually have inclusive communities that, people feel like they're valued and they can work within. But, not everybody's going to see it that way. So, nature of the beast.
I'm glad you said that, because when people ask me, I say, my hopes is that BIT doesn't have to exist at all. Like, if we do our part and we, and we really try to make, and that's why I think, unifying and collaborating will help so much more, because there's with me and BIT, like BIT has a really, really hardcore tech community, right? There are entrepreneurs in there, there's marketing people in there, there's project managers and things like that. But a core of our audience and our members are hardcore tech engineers, right? And so, how well would that play with, let's just say, organization that is focused on, helping, more young black men to code, right? Like all the mentors that are in our community, right? Like let's put together an event together, or let's do something together, or all the entrepreneurs and this part of another organization, or as part of that they have more of a lock on, right? How good would it be to get them two together in the same rooms? Because I know these entrepreneurs, they may be looking for technical co-founders, or they may be looking for developers or whatever, right? Like how dope would it be to get them all together and say, hey, like let's develop engineers meet and idea people or whatever, and make something really, really happen, because we all have our niche. And so I just think we could better serve the community as a whole if we would just, put egos aside and, just find a way to partner with each other, collaborate with each other. Like I'm not beyond that, at all. Like I'm not so into myself or so, into just bit that I can't, collaborate or partner with another organization to do something. So.
Well, that's good to hear, and I think there are people out there who are definitely willing to collaborate with you. I think you just kind of have to take a lot of swings, and it's unfortunate that it's like that. But I think we kind of know enough about the space to know who's going to be with it and who's not. So, it's just if you I'll definitely. Lend a hand to you, and I'll you told me I could send you emails, so I'm gonna be sending you emails all the time now.
Hey, yep.
So
man of my word.
Email, as soon as we get off this, you're gonna get an email. So,
okay.
So I think that's great, and I wish you the best of luck with that. But so I'm gonna ask our listeners to submit a question, and then we'll give you an opportunity to kind of tell people where they can find out more about you, about BIT, and about BITCON. So it says, hello, Greg. My name's Harold. I'm an accountant who's interested in learning more about the tech space. I've noticed several meetup flyers posted online and local businesses promoting some developer groups, and I'd like to attend, but I worry about fitting in and communicating in this space I'm not quite versed in yet. So any advice on how to get better acquainted with the developer community and resources for learning more about immersing myself in the tech space?
Right. So I'm going to say this, shameless plug here. BIT has a Slack channel. If you go to blacksandtechnology.net, at the bottom of our site, there is a link, an icon for Slack. I would say, let's start there, because our Slack channel is, I think we're close to 3,000 people in our Slack channel, people all across the nation. We have channels broken out as far as tech disciplines and interests. So there's coding, there's entrepreneurship, there's engineering, there's all types of stuff, and it's also broken out by geographical location as well. So if you want to get at least start with your own people, so that you can get a little bit, so you can kind of ease into it, right? Like that's a fear of a lot of people are going to some of these meetups and some of these different events and being like, not only are you, kind of new to the tech scene, but you're also a person of color, and that can be like a double whammy, right? So coming to the Slack channel where, A, it's black people, right? And then B, no one's going to flame you or insult you if you ask a question that may seem elementary, right? So we're all about helping people out. We're all about helping each other learn and transferring knowledge to each other. So that's one thing. Another thing, there's all types of online resources out there as well, especially if you are looking to become a little bit more knowledgeable about a certain language, development language. Check out, what is it, Code Academy, Coursera, Lynda. There's a ton of them out there if you want to get more acquainted with the language itself. And then I would say, go to these meetups and just put yourself out there. I know for some people that may be hard to do, but I mean it's kind of one of those things where like you just kind of have to just bite the bullet and put yourself out there. And if you want to get more immersed in this community, as far as startup spaces too, there's a ton of different podcasts. Your podcast, Amanda, I know Don Dixon was doing a podcast as well. There are a ton of different podcasts out there too that focus on startups. Like if you're looking to become more knowledgeable about the startup space, check out podcasts because there's a lot of language around startups that people might not know about. And I think like listening to podcasts and getting more acquainted with at least with the terminology and things like that could be a big help. So when you're in these spaces and you hear these terms get called out, like you're not blindsided. You're not looking like you don't know what you're talking about or whatever. So that's another thing. And then like I said, BitSlack channel, online resources, for coding. There's also some things out there for startups. I don't know like all the startup sites that you can go to, but like TechCrunch I know is still huge. So that it's just a matter of for me, I'm a little bit more extroverted, and I know for some people that are introverted it can be kind of hard to get out there, but it's just if you really want to get into this space and really start learning about startup space and tech in general, so, you really have to start just buckle down and go to some of these meetups. I mean, early on in my career, that's what I did. Like I said, it was easier for me, but I was the only person in that space, the only black person, period, in that space, and I did what I had to do. So
I mean, I totally get it, Harold, and I understand how it's intimidating. I don't have a technology background either. I'm kind of self-taught everything, and it can be intimidating, especially if you're in a room full of purists who are just like, oh, code.
Yeah.
So, I would just recommend kind of trying to meet people where you're at and just being transparent about, like, where you're at in your journey. Like, letting people know that, like, hey, like, I know nothing about coding or about development or technology in particular, but it interests me, and I'm here to learn more, and anything you guys can teach me, I'm willing to receive. And I think people kind of respond to that kind of humility, and they will rally around you. I've never really been in a space, like, as much as people, like, say that, tech is kind of exclusionary, like, I've never really been in a space where people didn't want to support my growth in the space. Like when I went, every time I go into one of these events and I just say, hey, this is where I'm at, and blase, people are like, oh, okay, well, here's some resources, or here's some things you could look at, or here's somebody you should talk to because they might be able to help you with this, or, here they have a program, or, people are full of ideas because they understand that they had to start at someplace too. They're very seldomly do I meet people who are just complete jerks about it. I mean, I have met a few, but, they pale in comparison to the wonderful people I've met who've actually been supportive of my growth. So just try to take that leap and get out there.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that real quick and say it. If definitely ask questions and own up to what you don't know, because one thing about like tech people is that tech people love to talk about what they know, right? And if you get them talking about something, like they could go on and on and on and on and on. And so, you're totally correct. Like there's been rare occasions where I've run across someone who's just a total jerk about something, and that's probably happened only a handful of times compared to the number of times someone is just willing to just sit down and say, hey, yeah, this is this and this and this, and give you all the resources and give you all the knowledge that they, or as much as they can in that period of time, out of their head, and give it to you. So don't be afraid to just go out there and like Amanda said, put yourself out there and just say, hey, I'm new, I don't know this, I would like to know, and you'll be surprised at the number of people that are going to just try to fill you with as much information as possible.
All right, well, you heard it, Harold. So we're going to wrap up now, but Greg, if you want to tell people where they can find you, learn more about it and BITCON, please feel free to shout out your website and handles.
Yeah. So blacksintechnology.net is the website, spelled exactly how it sounds. We're on Twitter, and that's at BlackandTechnology, but that's BLKINTECHNOLOGY. We're on Blacks in Technology everywhere else, on Instagram and Facebook, and that's spelled exactly the way it sounds. We also have a LinkedIn group under Blacks in Technology. BITCON.tech, so BITCON.tech is the conference website, so that's happening October 9th through 12th, the Twin Cities, Minnesota. 4 days of programming. Tickets I think start at maybe $179. So it's not an outrageously it's not an outrageous ticket price. So if you can make it out, definitely come out. And there's also ticket prices for individual days. So if you can only make it one day, you don't want to go for the entire 3 days or 4 days, I should say. Then you can do that as well. And then the last day, the community day, I think either it's free or tickets are very, very inexpensive, like $10 or something like that. So you can reach out to me. You can follow me at @bit_Greg, GREGGREENLE. So BIT_GREGGREENLE. Yep, that's it.
All right. Well, I hope you guys got it. And, Greg, thank you so much. I'm sending you an email tonight.
Definitely.
And I will talk soon. And
thank you.
Best of luck and success on everything you have coming up.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate it. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to MVP. If you'd like to hear more from me or our guests, visit mvpodcast.substack.com for exclusive content, updates, and announcements. And if you love the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us, or follow us at The Amanda Spann and MV Podcast. Thanks again, and see you next week.